Next up, a British bike shop says it's been banned by Shimano for inspecting their potentially faulty cranks. Mapdec Cycle Works, who are also on YouTube, were part of Shimano's crank inspection and recall program. We've talked about this program a few times on this show, but for people who missed it, Shimano basically admitted that about 2.8 million of its Holotech cranks could potentially delaminate and break. Rather than just recalling them all, it told customers who owned cranks with a certain serial numbers to get them inspected by an authorized bike shop. Mapdec was one of those shops, and in a recent video they said that they don't bother inspecting the cranks, they just send them back for replacement. They claim Shimano saw this, and then they were told that because they had a 100% fail rate, they couldn't be part of the inspection program anymore. But Mapdec claims that the reason they didn't pass cranks is that one of their own mechanics' cranks cracked a few weeks after passing inspection, and they didn't want this to happen to customers. He said it was terrifying as he was doing hard efforts at the time, and that he was lucky to stay upright.
And they aren't the only bike shop to have had this problem. So back in episode 46, we reported how another bike shop called Surrey Hills Cycle Works inspected a customer's crank, passed it, only for it to break on a ride 5 months later. And the owner of that shop wasn't happy either, as you would expect. He said that it made the whole program feel like a bit of a gamble and argued that if you've created cranks that fail, they should all just be exchanged. He also argued that it's still the responsibility of the rider to constantly inspect their crank after it's officially been inspected, which, in his opinion, made a mockery of the official check.
After being banned, Mapdec put out a follow-up video that we'll link in the description. In that, they clarify they do check over the cranks, but that they either mark them as fail or not sure, and then they send the information to Shimano to make the final call. They said, "We don't want to be the ones to say this is a pass, even though Shimano gave a liability release. That release in our minds wasn't strong enough, and we had customers saying, how do I know it's safe? And coming back a week later saying, can you inspect it again? So eventually we'd fail it." This is a horrible situation for consumers and the bike shops.
Mm-hmm. I can understand their thinking on it. I didn't actually realise there was a liability release. That makes sense. So I guess what that means is if a bike shop has passed a crank, which then later fails, the bike shop is not liable for, I guess, any injury that might be caused. Because this is the thing, if it cracks while you're out, that's the whole reason that they've started this recall program in the first place, is that people were injured. So that liability is taken away from them, but it still creates an awkward situation, doesn't it? With the customer, you have to put time and energy into resolving that, or I don't know. I wouldn't want to be involved in it.
It seems like so much extra work for a bike shop. I know so officially, if you're a Shimano service centre, you get paid to inspect the crank, £35. But it's more than £35 worth of work, because there's all just back and forth with the customers, and it's just annoying, and it puts a bad taste in the customer's mouth probably, and it's just...
You have to send it off, you have to get it back, you have to have the customer back in.
Well, and sending things is annoying, isn't it? Like sending boxes, doing all that, like it is work. And if you're a bike shop, you don't want that on top of all of the stock that's incoming. It's just hassle.
However, playing devil's advocate, I think the reason they probably got banned is that in that original video, they said, we don't inspect them, we just send them off.
That was a mistake to say that.
Probably. And I think they've acknowledged that with this follow-up video, and they've said, actually, we do. So potentially it was just that they misspoke. However, Shimano's seen that and they aren't happy about it.
It's shit for consumers, it's shit for bike shops, it's also shit for Shimano. I have a Dura-Race crank which needs to be inspected, and I still haven't got it inspected, and I don't want it. I just want a nice new one that is definitely not going to fail. From a bike shop's perspective, it's obviously junk because, yes, they need products to sell, but more importantly, they need customers, because otherwise there's no point in having product to sell. So they're... Like, surely all bike shops' priority is that their customers go, I have every confidence in the work that you're doing.
Yep.
So it makes sense for them to prioritize a good outcome for the customer. From Shimano's perspective, obviously, they want to be able to control how brands that are presumably signing up to be authorized dealers represent their brand. They've decided, whether it's right or wrong, that they have a particular course of action is correct, and they need their authorized dealers to follow that process. The easy solution so that everyone loves Shimano, everyone loves the bike shops, and everyone feels confident in what they've got is for Shimano to replace all of the cranks.
Totally. We've said it before. We said that back when we first talked about it. We've talked about this numerous times. I feel like these stories are going to continue to crop up. And every time they do they not just whittle away at your trust in Shimano, which was probably already shaken when this whole thing kicked off, if you are someone who's affected. If you are a person with one of these affected cranks who takes it to a dealer and they say, yep, pass, are you happy with that outcome?
No.
I wouldn't be.
I wouldn't be.
Says we've both been riding my one, which is technically, it could be one of the dangerous cranks.
But I would be happy with that as an outcome if I hadn't heard that actually it isn't an appropriate test.
Of course it's not an appropriate test. A visual inspection from some guys at a bike shop.
Well, it's I would say is it's disputed whether it is an appropriate test. Shimano argues that it is an appropriate test. However, can it be an appropriate test if you have to keep performing that test and continue to monitor your crank after that test happens?
Oh, it's so annoying, isn't it? Because I guess there are some products that fail not because of this issue and because of, I don't know, they've been damaged in transit or have actually been like hit by a car or dropped and therefore they're weakened. And I guess Shimano are just trying to get out of replacing those ones.
I don't know. I just think I think these stories are going to continue to crop up, and that is a result of there not just being a full recall.
It feels, because I remember when we talked about it when it first came out, and it felt like the cost to replace them all was a lot of money, but well within Shimano's capabilities.
Yeah.
And it's just a really, like, the entire, like, road cycling world would have gone, oh my God, Shimano are the greatest group set brand in the entire world. They care about their customers.
Perhaps it's just that the numbers of these things actually failing isn't that much. But when it does fail, it's catastrophic and therefore it makes headlines. That's the only other thing that I can assume. But I think once you've been burnt by it, Surrey Cycle Works and Mapdec, if they have had an instance, even if it's just one, of passing something and then it then failing at a later point, I can completely see why they would not be willing to confidently pass something again.
Just maybe don't say it on YouTube.
Just maybe don't say. I think the problem was that they said they weren't they weren't actually inspecting them. That was their bad. But I mean, are they bothered to be out? Is it a sad shame for them that they're now out of this thing? Yeah, they've done themselves a favour.
You have to pay to be a Shimano service centre. That's why Nick didn't do it. Well, probably amongst other reasons. But it's like, hang on, you got to pay and then you got to do all this stuff. He's like, no.
I should say that we reached out to Shimano and Madison for a comment on this, and both of them declined to comment. So on to the next one.